This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
We're going to be talking resilience, we're going to be talking rest again, like we have been for the last few weeks, but this time we're going to be talking from the perspective of an early careers teacher, and we have the fantastic Harriet joining us on the show this evening. I hope my technical hitches from the beginning haven't scared her off. It's certainly tested my resilience, just to take a deep breath and try and make sure that everything works. So I think I've got somebody just come in here requesting to be a speaker. Here we are. Let me make sure that works, and I'm hoping this is Harriet. But let me say a few things to start us off this evening. So we're going to be thinking about rest, thinking about resilience, and we're going to be looking at a few different patterns and some things to do with being an early careers teacher and what that's like these days. So think about those early careers teachers, think about them in those first years of teaching when quite a lot of their training has been through the pandemic, and now going into schools with huge challenges that come out of the back of the pandemic, and think how difficult that is quite often for even the most experienced of teachers. For new teachers, let's think how difficult that is. So when we're talking about supporting early careers teachers, we're going to look at two angles. What can schools do to support their ECTs? And I've got some really, really good research to draw on and a few thoughts and ideas about that to share as well. But what advice could we give to early careers teachers themselves? And that's what I'm really fascinated to hear from Harriet in a little while. So, Harriet, thank you for joining us. A little bit behind after the slightly dodgy start, and thank you to everybody for your kindness and support with that. So, thinking about recruitment and retention in teaching, and thinking about the early careers teachers and trainees coming in right at the beginning of that career. Earlier on this year, there was an article in The Guardian, and it was saying that nearly a third of teachers who qualified in the last decade have since left the profession. And that's a huge figure. If we think about that, out of just under 270,000 teachers who qualified between 2011 and 2020, more than 81,000 have since left the profession. That's 3 in 10, that's about a third. And more recently, 13% of teachers who've qualified since 2019, so in teaching a maximum of 4 years, have quit 2 years after starting. So 3,000 teachers gave up within 2 years. And there's an estimate by the Labour Party saying that there are at the moment about 350,000 qualified teachers who are currently not teaching in the state sector. So 13% of teachers, 1 in 10, giving up within 2 years of ever starting it out. So I'll be really fascinated to hear from Harriet about what keeps early careers teachers in the job. Why does she keep coming back every day? What's great about it? What tips has she got? What advice would she give to early careers teachers. So that's what we're going to be talking to Harriet about just shortly. And then we've got a little bit of research and a few other thoughts and chats, and we'll see if anybody else wants to add to that. So let's come to Harriet, and then let's hear how Harriet is. And yeah, let's start a chat. So Harriet, I'm just going to bring you off mute there. So,
Hi,
how are you?
Maxine. Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Do you know, I've had to do some of those things that we've talked about a little bit about deep breathing and yeah, just relax and try and take back and accept sometimes things will go wrong. Goodness knows what's happened to my
Yeah.
microphone, but I am all right. But all the better for talking to you. So, can I thank you enormously, first of all, for giving up your Friday evening at the end of a busy working week and joining us?
No,
So,
it's
thank you.
no, it's no problem at all. I'm just sort of sat here thinking, right, okay, I've got my questions ready and answers.
Well, it's just a bit of a chat, Harriet. So let's hear because it's really important we hear about what it's like to be an early careers teacher. Now we've got that statistic that says that 13%, more than 1 in 10, are have quit within 2 years, and you're still there. You're hanging in, and you've done an amazing job. I've just got to say that publicly to you, on as public as it gets, not millions of listeners, but it's out there with for anyone to hear. You are doing an absolutely stunning job, and you work hard, and you've been through some huge challenges, Harriet. And like with the world of the ECT, it never is easy. So there's two sorts of angles to this evening. One is about what schools can do to really support ECTs, and the other underlying theme is really what tips and advice can we give to ECTs to help themselves. So, at the moment, many early careers teachers will be just, sort of maybe weeks away from starting their first job. Lots will start in July, which is great because you then get paid over the summer. Some are very
Absolutely.
fortunate to do that, which is, really nice. Some will start in September. So I know you're going to tell us some things, but can we roll it back first of all, Harriet? Because I'd love to hear from you. Going back, what was it that really brought you into teaching? Why teaching?
Yeah, it's I mean, I started out as a nursery nurse, and then I came into being a teaching assistant, and it was kind of that love of supporting children.
Hmm.
And even from a young age, I would set work for my teddies and always do the register and do all those kind of things that I presumed a teacher would do. Obviously, it's a completely different ball game when you come into the career, um, but I feel like I was always made to be a teacher or to help with children learning, and going through kind of difficulties and supporting them through.
Yeah. So you felt you were meant to be a teacher.
Yes, yeah, I definitely feel like teaching was kind of in my pathway of some sort. I don't know if um, progression is potentially on the card like later in life. I don't know if I would like to be sort of senior leadership, but I definitely think staying in education and doing something for the children is what I was here to be.
Yeah, that's your path, that's your purpose. And
Yeah.
when we come, and lots of the other things we've talked about over the last few weeks have been about living your values. That's something that when things are tough, if you are following your values and true to your purpose, that can help. But that's sounding like teaching for you. Some of the key things behind it are what have really drew you to it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, often sort of speak to friends and they'll say, "Oh, my parents were teachers, so I've kind of come
Mm.
into that tradition or that kind of work life." But my parents aren't teachers. They, and I always struggled in school. So I think actually that's kind of given me a drive to go, I struggled in school. What can I do to support children that also struggle in school?
Oh my goodness, that's fascinating, and I would have never known that, even though we've spoken in school. You found school quite hard yourself.
Yeah. I was kind of really struggled to access the curriculum and was always taken out for small groups and things. And I kind of felt like I was difficult and the odd one out because I was kind of going for those extra support sessions and wasn't, I was in the classroom, but they used to take me out to do reading and things like that. So, I see the children and see how they struggle. And I think, right, what can I do to put in place to kind of support them how my teacher maybe didn't support me or how I needed the support.
Now that's fascinating, isn't it? And that, that when we're talking about purpose, you've walked in those little shoes of children that are finding it hard, and you've had some experiences that haven't helped.
Yeah. And I think as a teacher, you kind of have to like look back and go, right, what can I do to make their life easier in school?
Yeah, and that real empathy.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that might bring us into the second question, or that I'd really like to ask you, or it could take us in a completely different direction. But what's great about being a teacher? What's the thing that you walk away going, no, that's brilliant, and that's why I do it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of that most people say it, but it is that impact you have on children.
Yeah,
It's kind of,
yeah,
you have your tough days, but you think, I have made a little bit of an impact, or I've made that child smile, or you've done something that has helped that child in the future, or right there and then in that moment.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I kind of want the children to think of me as the wild, fun teacher that kind of, is quite bubbly and loud and things like that. But I've had a tough year, and they probably don't see me like that at all. And
Oh.
um, but it's that kind of impact that you have and that little footprint you leave on them as they grow up and go, oh, I remember my year three teacher, or you know,
Well, I'm sure they do, because we remember not so much what we see and what we hear, but what we feel and how people make us feel. And you've described having that empathy for children, particularly ones who find it hard, or any children at all. And all children have a day where something is difficult, and your empathy and how you are with the children will make them feel. And therefore, that wild and fun teacher, that'll be there, and that'll be in. And he says the dragon, they'll remember that was firm and fair, and that made them feel safe. And
yeah,
children will remember. It's really, just to share with you, without using too much of your airtime, 'cause you're way more fascinating than me. But I was talking to a parent today, and they were actually telling me about their old school days, and they weren't necessarily somebody for whom I would have thought, was going to really hark back about school and be so positive, but spoke really openly about an old headmistress in that, that's sort of the era, head teacher, female one, who had
yeah,
taken the time to take them aside and teach them how to read. And that had obviously really stuck with that person. I just thought, my goodness, that's a real impact, and that must have made that person feel really, really valued. And you've got that with your children. It's such a privilege, isn't it?
absolutely, yeah. And they come home and they say to their parents, I've done this today, or Miss Barnes has helped with this. So I think that's kind of going back to the question, like that's probably why I am in teaching, for that impact on the children and to support them through life and lessons that they need to learn.
Yeah, and that's it, and that really shows in your work. What's been the highlight of your time as being an ECT these 2 years, as you come to the end of ECT time? What's the highlight? What really stands out?
That I've made it through it.
Yes,
um,
survival.
yeah, survival at the moment. But again, I think it's just seeing that progress with the children. It's
Yeah.
when they come in September, and because I've swapped schools, so I haven't necessarily seen the progress for the 2 years.
Hmm.
But starting in a new school in September and seeing where they were and where they've come, and for some of
Yeah.
them, it is a small difference of they can join their letters up now, but actually that's a huge impact and a huge kind of progression for them, I suppose. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I just think it's that kind of the progression that you see through the children
Yeah,
at
I
the
mean,
beginning.
well, totally. It's all steps that are valid for every child, isn't it? And you can see that progress. You can see they couldn't join at the beginning, and now they can.
Absolutely, yeah,
And their progress as well, their growth as small humans.
yeah, yeah. I mean, learning how to communicate with each other and stuff,
Yeah.
just kind of listening to conversations and thinking, you know what, you've handled that really well. I hope that was kind of a bit of my guidance towards that sort of thing. Yeah.
And I think, Harriet, that's really important. And whilst we're here to talk challenges, and I presented some pretty stark statistics about 1 in 10 early careers teachers giving up within 2 years since 2019, which is huge. And
Mm,
we're not meeting the recruitment targets, and we're not retaining teachers. I think it's really important sometimes to take a step back and realise why. I don't say it lightly, but it is the best job in the world. We don't, my husband works in logistics, and he spent time where his purpose in life has been moving t-shirts around the Midlands. I think, look at the impact you have on children. It's so significant, isn't it? And it is such a great
yeah,
job.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It comes with its highs, definitely for sure, but then it also has its difficulties, like every other job, I suppose.
it does, and other jobs have difficulties too, but teaching, nobody would deny that teaching is an extremely challenging profession. So I wondered if we could move on and just tell us what some of the challenges have been this year or the 2 years.
Yeah, I think over the 2 years, it's the kind of the behaviour and the impact
Yeah,
I feel on social communication, how children interact with one another. I don't know if that's kind of been linked to COVID or, other people have kind of felt the same. But for me, especially this year, it is that behaviour and working together skills that they just haven't seemed to be
yeah.
educated on and have grasped from a young age because of the lack of interaction they've had probably.
I think that's really really interesting. And when we talk about that, about behavior and communication, and some poor behavior is an absolute choice, some of it is communication, and that's a whole different debate for another day. But I certainly have seen some challenging behaviour, and children who don't necessarily have communication skills, and teachers having to work hard to develop those, and having even stronger structures and processes in place, and relationships to counterbalance that. When I was a younger teacher a while ago, a long while ago, there was a lot of focus then on, oh, we're preparing children for jobs that we don't even know what exist yet, and it all needs to be about making sure that they can work the technology. And don't get me wrong, technology is really really important, and computing it's okay. But I tend to find that with strong curriculum, children will learn and will pick up technology, and we can work on that really quickly. But it is a slower burn and much tougher to keep the curriculum being about behaviour. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've got children that aren't behaving correctly, then you can't kind of teach the curriculum, and it kind of is
Yeah,
that vicious circle, isn't it, of going back down to basics and teaching them, how to sit quietly and not fiddle or not talk while you're talking and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it has been hugely challenging, hugely challenging. What have you learnt about yourself and your resilience over the last couple of years, Harriet?
I mean, I think overall I've learned that I'm pretty strong in myself and that,
Yeah,
no matter how much of a bad day I've had, I always go back the next day and, you don't give up sort of thing. Um, and, I think Celine's on the call and she can kind of vouch for this, the tears and and the sort of the upset, but you keep coming back. So I think actually, I've probably cried a lot, but I've also laughed a lot, and I've got through all those difficult moments, and I've learned that you can get, if I can get through this year, I can get through anything that it throws at me.
Oh, and Harriet, congratulations. And, that level of vulnerability and honesty that's there, it's absolutely fine to have a good cry. And things are difficult and things are challenging, aren't they? And you
Absolutely, yeah.
have, you've got some good colleagues there with you, with people like Celine, who I know is here. So hello, Celine. Lovely that you've joined us this evening. And yeah, you acknowledging that it's hard and people around you acknowledging that's difficult. And yeah, congratulations for keeping going with that, for taking the support that you've got around you, and building on it, and using it to your boost your resilience and learning it. So
Yeah.
what would be your tips for developing and growing resilience? How have you done that?
I think you kind of have to reflect and go, right, what has gone well, what
Mhm.
was an absolute disaster. Why was it a disaster? Was it because of the behaviour? Was it because you've delivered it wrong? And kind of, it's not even that I write it down. I just reflect it in my head and go, okay, this is, this is what I need to do next time, maybe to support the children. Um, and just, I would say, just keep looking back and going, right, well, that went really well. And try and tell yourself
Yeah.
that, there are bits that did go well and it wasn't all a disaster, but tell yourself, okay, no, that went well. Take from that and then move forward. And I think, we're all our worst enemies of beating ourselves up and saying, oh, that was rubbish, this was rubbish. But actually, you've got to try and find the good
Yeah.
to keep yourself going.
And I think that's really important. So I think what I'm hearing from you then is looking back at it and trying to reflect objectively, and trying to see, and noticing that there is good in what you've done. And whilst it
Yes,
might feel like it's all gone wrong, there is actually a lot of good in what you've done.
yeah,
And noticing that there would be, we've all got that negative bias, haven't we? Everybody notices the bad things so much more quickly than anything that's good. But being objective about that, and noting the good. But also, that's interesting what you said about where things haven't gone well, sorry. And you've said your language was very much about, and when I do this again, it's going to be better. So that whole reflection in a positive way, I can do it again, and I can do it, and
yeah.
I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and this is what's going to make it work this time.
Yeah, and I think actually, being able to reflect like that, the goods and the bads, definitely builds up your resilience, and it definitely kind of gives you that momentum of, okay, not every day is going to be great, but you've reflected, you've learned from it, and you move forward, sort of thing.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready to go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
Fantastically. Oh my goodness, we've got a message that's come in, Harriet. Right, okay, it says from a certain Celine. Honestly, Harriet has been the most amazing partner teacher that I could have hoped for in my first year. Things have been tough, but she's never lost her shine. Wow, that is
Oh,
just so lovely. So,
very
Harriet, what I'm
sweet,
going
Celine.
to go on. Sorry, I talked over you then. Please say
No,
again.
I was going to say that's very sweet. I know Celine's in her first year as an ECT, so yeah, the two of us together have kind of battled through the first year and second year of our teaching careers.
Yeah, and it has been tough, and what a lovely thing. Things have been tough, but she has never ever lost her shine. So
Mhm.
I'm going to move on and talk about rest, because that's one of the things that we've been talking about. Are you all right to just take a pause for a minute while I play a message from our sponsors? Hopefully,
Absolutely. Yeah.
technology will be on my side. Just bear with us one moment.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme.
Okay, short word there from our sponsors, Language Learning. Thank you very much. So back to you again, Harriet. Let's talk a little bit about rest, how you find time for rest. We've heard from Celine that you've been so amazing, that even through the tough times, you've never ever lost your shine. You've talked about your resilience, you've talked about being objective and looking for the things that have gone well, and then looking a little bit factually at the things that could be better and thinking how you're going to make them better next time. So really, really positive about the fact you can.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, go on.
no, so what about finding time to have a rest, take a break?
Yeah, I really struggle to rest, and I'm always sort of like on the go, and if I'm not thinking about work, I'm thinking about something else, and you know, brain is always ticking over, I think, as a teacher. But last year I did start running, and just getting out in the fresh air or even walking with my dog has really helped just kind of relax your mind and your body almost. Um, and sometimes before bed, if you have like a really rough day, I just try and put a meditation sort of podcast thing on or something that helps you sleep. And normally it makes me drift off great, and I have the best sleep sort of thing when I listen to a podcast that kind of just makes you go into almost like a sense of lull and just deep
Yeah.
breathing and relaxing. Um, so yeah, so rest wise, I do a bit of running. Um, I also set myself boundaries, which I've only just started to do in my second year as an
Oh,
ECT. And I've kind of said on a Wednesday or whatever day, I'm not taking my laptop home tonight, and I'm going to have the day off. Um, and I try and schedule in weekends of doing nothing. And that sounds ridiculous having to schedule it
no.
in, but from being such an active, busy person, I have to block out weekends and just say, no, I'm not doing anything this weekend. I'm literally just going to take time to just catch up on life admin and just relax. Um, so yeah, and I definitely think sort of as an ECT, you always think, oh, I know I should be doing this. Your list of to dos is just never ending. You're just constantly trying to catch your tail, but you're never going to catch up on work. It's always a continuous thread of things you've got to do. So I think it's really important that you do just leave your laptop at work and have that night off, or block a weekend of you just doing nothing and enjoying the sunshine sort of thing.
Harriet, there's so much that's so brilliant there, and that whole point about leave your laptop at work, because teaching is the job that's never done. Who has ever finished planning, finished checking, finished if there is any still written work to do? It can just expand, can't it?
Mm, absolutely. And like I say, like it is a to-do list that is never ending. It just seems to get longer and longer. And as a person that will write a list for a list, I've had to kind of learn that the to-do list is always going to be 5 or 6 points long sort of thing, and I'm never going to get it down to just nothing, because as a teacher there's always something else you should be doing, or there's always something that could be done. It's taken me, second year as an ECT to realise I'm not always going to get it done. And actually, I need to just leave my laptop at work, and whatever I don't get done before 4:30 or whatever. It stays and I'll pick it up tomorrow.
And that's so important, and huge congratulations for doing that, because the biggest priority, the biggest difference you can make in the lives of young people is to be there to be the best version of yourself that you can be when you're standing in front of them or amongst them when you're being their teacher. And I just think that's really, really powerful that you take that, so that you do that. And also, because you absolutely deserve it. You're human being first and professional second, and it's a really important job. But I think it's really crucial that we owe it to ourselves to do that. So, absolutely celebrate you coming on here and talking about that, Harriet. It's great.
Yeah, and I think actually, you gave that statistic. I think it was what 13% of
Mm,
ECTs between 2019 and 2020, or I think actually if teachers like myself have gone through the factor of what am I going to do? This is so difficult. I'm really struggling. But actually, when you learn to take care of yourself and learn to put the laptop away,
yeah.
you it makes you love the job more, I think, because you go back with a fresh face and you're not exhausted and you've not done planning until silly o'clock or whatever. And it gives people the kind of time, it gives you the time to just be you rather than be the teacher.
And you being you, and identification, your identity of yourself as who you are, is so important, and links to some research that I've got to talk about later. So I hope you hang around and listen to that. That's absolutely amazing, Harriet, to hear that. Really, really super advice about taking that time. May
Yeah,
I
I know.
go? Go on.
Sorry,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, Harriet. Go on.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say it took me, it's taken me until this year to kind of realise that your mental health and your own well-being is above, you know, everything really. And I think if you don't take the time that you need, then you will burn yourself out and you will end up giving teaching in and stuff. So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
Totally, totally. What is it you think that makes ECTs? And it could be talk about yourself, or it could be reference to others, that prevents people from having that realization. It took you a relatively long amount of time, you've just said, to reach that. What is it that makes teachers, ECTs, feel that you do have to be on your laptop every night, that you have to keep going?
I think that's a really I think there's so many areas of that that kind of
Yeah,
makes teachers think I have to do this, I have to do that, because it is, you know, although you're not getting pressure from your line manager, from your manager that that has to be done, there is that internal pressure I think
yeah,
you put on yourself as a teacher.
yeah.
And I think it's taken me a long time to realise that you do need to have a break, because I think when you're in any other job, you do kind of have that hour lunch and you do finish at 5:30 and your laptop's shut and stuff. And my partner, he'll finish at 5:30 and that's it. He's done for the
Mm.
evening. But I think when you're in education, you put more pressure on yourself than I think you need. And yeah,
And
that's
it is, it's a very high accountability business, and it is hugely challenging. So yeah, thank you for that, Harriet. Can I come back to the running?
of course can. Yeah.
So yeah, so you started running. So running, we know, of course, is great for mental rest, because it is just something that you keep chugging along doing. You don't need a lot of thinking about it, and it's one of those times when it's a really good head clear. What made you
Mhm.
start?
I think what made me start was fitness wise. I
Okay,
wanted
yeah.
to just build up my fitness. So this I started in the summer last year, and I thought, right, I'm going to just in the 6 weeks holiday. What can I do? Let's go for a run. And I started off like slowly, and I hated it, and it was
Yes.
just you kind of plodding along, thinking, why am I doing this? With your face red and sweat and everything. You think, God. But then once you're finished, you just feel great. So I've kept that up, and actually now I do use it rather than fitness. I use it more of a tool as a, go and clear your head. Don't think about anything. Um, and I don't listen to anything either. I know some people when they're running they do listen to things, but I kind of just work on my breathing, listening to the birds and stuff. I run in the fields next door to me, so um, yeah, it's definitely turned from a fitness health want to like lose weight almost to more of a, do you know what, I think I just need to go for a run for my own clearing my head. Um, yeah, and it has helped. Even if I run, walk, it's just that kind of sense of you're out in the fresh air, you're having time to yourself, and you're not thinking of anything. Like you say, you kind of just, your brain just kind of goes and you think of other things and you think of this hill that you're running up rather than the work that you've got to do.
And that's fascinating, isn't it? It is just on that. And it's interesting what you said about not having the music on. I'm with you. I started with music because I started with the Couch to 5K and the headphones with Sarah Millican telling me when to walk and when to take a
Yeah,
break. But now, yeah, like you, I prefer just to hear the birds or the sound in the trees. And yeah, I'm with that as well. That's interesting.
yeah, and I think actually it's when you listen to music, I find I end up running faster or I end up trying to sing, and it just doesn't work for me.
There's nothing wrong with trying to sing. I think that there's well-being benefits there. But we've got Claire saying, "Me too, no music." Claire's a non-music person when she's running as well. So that is an interesting one. I like what you said about run, walk as well, making it manageable and making it about that head clear and not training
Yeah, and I think
necessarily.
again it's kind of that resilience of, oh, I could stop but I'm not going
Mm.
to, but I'm going to stop maybe when I get to that bush. So you're kind of again giving yourself those boundaries and those, that pressure that's not intense pressure, I suppose. I always felt like I had to go for a run and I had to run at my fastest pace for as long as I could, but actually take the pressure off, go for a bit of a walk first, then go for the run. um, just do what your body needs you to do rather than just put the pressure on all the time.
And that's a fascinating point, actually, about pressure there and about thinking about what is the purpose of the run? Is the purpose to push myself as physically hard as I can? And there are some people for whom that would be the purpose of their run. But your goal, your aims are around that well-being, and that
Yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I
fascinating.
mean, like I say, sometimes I do run and I push myself and I think, yeah, that's great. But then other times when you're not feeling it, don't put the pressure on.
Do what serves you. Very wise. So, what about other rest as well as running? What else do you do?
I have a very energetic 3-year-old puppy dog,
Oh,
Buzz, and I've just started doing agility with him. Well, I say just started. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, but I've started entering him in competitions. Um, and do you know what? We both love it. We both get a buzz from
ah,
just uh, just yeah, being outside and getting him to do the weaves and the jumps and the tunnel, and yeah, it's great fun. And sometimes I fall over and it's a great laugh as well for everyone else.
and I love that not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not a serious person, but yeah, if I can laugh at myself, then absolutely feel free to laugh with me, sort of thing. Um, Laughter's great.
Do you know, that's really interesting. When I first started teaching, oh my goodness, years and years and years ago, someone also said to me the importance sometimes of not taking yourself too seriously. And that then sometimes in front of a class, you've just said back about being the wild and fun teacher. That's a little bit about not taking yourself too seriously as well. And I wonder if there is something there about something that's been your superpower that's kept you, as Celine says, you've never lost your shine.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you know again, just you you've just got to be yourself. Although you are in a profession and you almost have to put on this this act of, right, I'm in school mode now, but actually letting yourself come through as a teacher and letting your hair down a little bit. And when I'm reading a story, I do silly actions and things like this. It makes the children just be more, they can relate a bit more to you then, can't they?
They love it. I know your class really like the fact you put so much of yourself into your work with them. That's another reason why they love you. So,
Yeah.
really great overview here of the things that you've done that have really helped you through your ECT year. And we haven't touched on the serious teaching stuff about your great pedagogy and the teaching and learning and all those tips. We'll leave those for another show. Today's about rest, resilience, and what really helps you through being an ECT. So that's been absolutely amazing to hear about your running, your brilliant life with amazing, gorgeous Buzz, who I'm really keen to meet. And this
Mhm.
not taking yourself too seriously, and hugely well done with managing some challenging behaviour in your class this year. And I know I've been teaching 20 odd years, and myself and a colleague um, came in and we taught them for a little while, and it's not easy. They are gorgeous, they're lovely, but it really helps us oldies sometimes just to see, yeah, I remember, it's challenging.
Mm,
You do such a good
definitely.
job. So I wonder if to wrap up before you go on and enjoy your Friday evening, I just wondered if you could share what would be your top tips for any soon to be early careers teachers, anyone that's starting before the summer or has got this amazing career ready to begin in September. How would you sum it up? What would you tell them?
I would say be organised, make a list of the things you do need to do and be organised. I carry around with me my massive diary that I absolutely is like my Bible. I love it. So I know exactly what I'm doing for the day. I know when there's assemblies, when this child's out. So that's, be organised, try and be ahead of the game. Um, Stick to the boundaries that you're going to set. If you say, I'm not doing work on
Mm.
a Saturday or a Sunday, don't do work. Try and get as much done as you can during the week, but set those boundaries. For me, I will try and leave my laptop at work 1 or 2 evenings during the week and then have a day off in the week, sort of thing. Just set those boundaries. Find something you love doing outside of teaching. For me, it's running, being with my dog, being with my partner, friends, family. Um, yeah, don't put your whole life into teaching because remember, you are, again, a person before teaching. Um, and meditate, really. I've I've kind of tried to do some breathing techniques and tried to manage myself in the classroom when those times have been tough. So I would definitely recommend learn how to just do some deep breathing, count to 10 in your head before you deal with incidences or anything inside the classroom.
I love that, Harriet. I mean, I love everything all that you've said there. Being organised, that's about being effective and your well-being, isn't it? The boundaries thing again. If you're having a day when you're not working, stick to it. And I really like that last bit about self-regulation as well, both for your own health. That point about meditating, and also about how much more effective that's going to make you if you can learn to regulate and then manage things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it's taken yourself to support me with that, but um, just giving yourself the time to think, okay, when the levels are high in your classroom, just try and bring yourself back down because, like you say, you are the teacher, you are in control, and there will be times when you don't feel like you're in control, but you've just got to take 5, do your breathing, do what you need to do to be back into that room and get that class where it needs to be. Sort of, yeah.
Harriet, I think if there are early careers teachers listening to this either now or are going to listen to it back, I think you've probably just helped to take that 13% figure right down and to help to keep more early careers teachers in the profession. If they listen to and follow you, and if they can follow you on Twitter as well, that's even better. And I know you're linked to me. I'm Maxine Coaching on Twitter. That's really, really helpful for them to know who you are, Harriet, as well.
Yeah, I actually don't know my Twitter tag. I think it's
Ah,
like Harriet Barnes, maybe Harriet
well, there we
B.
are. I don't think it would take an expert to find that out and uncover your true identity. But if they listen to this and listen to that advice, I just think that's absolutely golden. And I want to thank you enormously, both for coming on here this evening and chatting to me, but even more for everything you do with your lovely year 3 class in the primary school, and for having put up with me coming in and pestering and bothering you over the last 6 months. So
No,
thank you so much, Harriet.
thank you very much. I've just actually seen Claire's message, and yes, it is Buzz at the Canine Hub.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC reports that 1 in 3 primary schools has no male teachers. The study by the Warwick Business School says the proportion of schools without a male classroom teacher has increased in the last 12 months. The report's author, Dr. Joshua Fullard, said this lack of male teachers was bad for pupils. Dr. Fullard is Assistant Professor of Behavioural Science at Warwick Business School. He went on to say that there is a large body of research that shows students benefit from being educated by a teacher with certain similarities to them. The report also found that schools in special measures are less likely to have a male classroom teacher. In total, the report found that 24.3% of all state schools in England had no male classroom teachers. The report called for teachers' pay to be raised by more than 10% and for a merit-based reduction in tuition fees for university-led teacher training to be introduced. Julie McCulloch, Director of Policy for ASCL Union, said more needed to be done to attract men and women alike, and a spokesperson for the DfE said the department wanted the profession to be inclusive. North East Child Poverty Commission website reports that new figures published by the DfE confirm that more than 3 in 10 pupils across the North East are now registered for free school meals. This is an increase from January 2022. It remains the highest proportion of any part of England. The figure of 30.4% is compared with 18.8% of pupils in the South East and 19.4% in the east of England. The England-wide rate is 23.8%. All regions have seen a significant increase in the number and share of children eligible for free school meals over the last 7 years. The Guardian reports children's enjoyment of writing has fallen to crisis point, following research completed by the National Literacy Trust. The charity says an alarmingly low level of children and young people enjoy writing. The research was conducted across the UK. 34.6% of young people aged 8 to 18 said that they enjoy writing in their free time. Although 3 in 4 children starting school said that they enjoyed writing, This dropped to 1 in 4 by the age of 16. The Children's and Young People's Writing Report is drawn from over 70,000 responses from children to the charity's annual literacy survey. The number of children who say they enjoy writing in their free time has dropped by 12.2% in the 13 years since the survey began. Young people do report that they write to improve mental health and well-being and to support causes or issues they care about. Full details can be found on the National Literacy Trust website. Finally, Microsoft News reports that Taiwan has made the move to use generative artificial intelligence, or AI, to help students learn English. Teachers in the country often report that students read and write better than they speak English, as shyness and a lack of practice can hinder oral communication. A new chatbot has been funded by Taiwan's Ministry of Education to help pupils get the practice they need. The Coolie bot allows pupils to speak person to AI and build up conversation on preset topics. It also assesses punctuation, accuracy, and fluency. Taiwan has set a goal of becoming bilingual in Chinese and English by 2030. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week I'm going to ask you a question. Do you use presentation software to help you deliver your lessons? 99% of you will be saying yes at this point. Have you ever considered how many presentations the average pupil in your school sees in a day, in a week, or even in their entire school life? Considering a typical secondary education, with a bit of rough maths, over a week with 5 lessons a day, there's potential to see 25 presentations. That's 100 presentations in just 4 weeks. I've left out any additional presentations like assemblies and visitors, etc. Working on a 38-week year, that's a whopping 950 presentations a year. That's a lot of presentations. Now, let's throw in some schools have a standardized slide theme and set layouts. Now we have 950 exactly the same lesson beginnings. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but do we really know what experience a pupil gets through a typical week in school? Are they being engaged, or are they being presented with the same visual stimulus day in, day out, simply causing them to fly below the radar? If you're like me, you're now thinking, how do I make my presentation stand out? Is there a presentation software out there that's better than all the rest? In my humble opinion, this is like the visualizer versus HD webcam argument. What works for some does not work for others because all subjects are not the same, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but please bear in mind that what works for one teacher may not work for another. A search for free presentation software returns no less than 24 apps I recognise. Some are interactive like Mentimeter, others have more dynamic transitions like Prezi. Most also have additional features and add-ons you can purchase. I know what you're saying, come on Steve, which is the best though? Well, the answer is simple, but I've run out of time, so I'll have to tell you next week. In the meantime, please consider the number of presentations a typical pupil is subjected to in your school. Does this need to change, or does it work? And how do you know? Do you have a preferred presentation software, and what are the features that make it stand out for you? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
What a good job we had. The most amazing guests. I've been really fortunate with guests on the show since I started on Teachers Talk Radio with Claire, Josh, Zoe, and now Harriet. I feel really blessed to have had great people join me. And Harriet this evening talking about her experiences as an early careers teacher and some amazing top tips there for ECTs just before the news there. Talking about meditation, something that we spoke about last time I was on here, and we talked about rest, and we talked about really good mental and spiritual rest being so important. I was looking at some research as before the show earlier on this week about ECTs. I was looking at some specific research by the Economic and Social Research Council going back to 2022, based on 18 months of research from going back to September 2020. And it was based on secondary school school teachers, in particular ECTs who had done a PGCE in 2019-20 or 2020 to 21. And research was done by online surveys of trainees and ECTs and school leaders and mentors, and it's pretty strong research based completed by Dr. Lizzie Rushton at King's College and Emma Towers at King's College London, and has a few things that I also think, or many things, that are actually relevant to primary or secondary. So some of the key things their research showed were that ECTs who trained during that time actually had increased adaptability and resilience when facing specific challenges linked to the pandemic. And that's fascinating, isn't it? Because that's just showing that training in a different context actually brought them some extra learning. So they were better at a lot of the online stuff that some of us older teachers found quite difficult because they had to get into it really quickly. They found that another strength that they'd had was about building supportive networks amongst other ECTs and their mentors. Again, out of adversity, some of those strengths really shine. And we've seen that a little bit, I think, with Harriet and Celine, who've been here this evening. Both have been so supportive, and Oliver, who I know works with the two of them as well. Again, other strengths have been about making sure, about knowing that they've got, though they can make those links when they're close. However, it found a number of much bigger problems for those trainees. It found that whilst building supportive networks among other ECTs and mentors was a strength for many, there was still a significant number for whom that was a concern, and they tended to be ones who were more likely to leave the profession if they hadn't got those links. They also found that mental health and well-being was worse and was more of a concern for those trainees and those ECTs than it ever had been before. More was statistically reporting mental health and well-being concerns. So again, no surprise to find that research has found that the COVID-19 pandemic significantly disrupted anybody who trained between 2019 and 21. And what it's also meant is that trainees during that time, even with within the same cohort, will have experienced their training very differently. There would have been much less consistency, and it's largely dependent on school placements as well, what their experience was like. And many different schools, their circumstances being different, will have adapted differently during the pandemic. I know there were some schools that didn't have trainees. And again, thank you, Celine. Celine did her degree and trained throughout the pandemic and only went on one placement over the 3 years when she was meant to have 3. It was a huge challenge, but it did make me resilient. And again, Harriet, that will have been similar for you. And I know other ECTs where that is something that is really huge. So these are some of the key findings. So there are some positives. So ECTs are better at using IT to support teaching and learning as a result. Again, a little bit of needs must. And other findings, there's been real tension between the need for personalised support and what's actually been provided in the induction programmes. So because all those experiences were so different, it's been really challenging. And we could have a whole program on the early careers framework. And again, what a lot of ECTs have found is that the framework has been a little bit too rigid in some cases. Now, I know there are cases where people have adapted it and used it to their purposes, and I know that we've been able to give some feedback on it, but that's something that was a finding here. And we've also found that particularly in secondary, that trainees had less opportunity for actual sort of pastoral practice, some more of the well-being stuff where you're linked with getting to know the students. And again, Even in primary, I should think, with Celine only being in one placement, not 3, you've not met as many students. You've had limited engagement with parents and little or no involvement in extracurricular activities. So that is a hugely different training. Harriet, really lovely for putting a message saying thank you for having me on. Seriously, thank you for coming on. It was great to talk all things ECT and resilience, and you did that so beautifully. Thank you very much. So the report's come up with some recommendations for schools. So I wonder how this balances with some of the things we've heard from Harriet this evening about things that ECTs can do to help themselves. Schools should try and think about how unique their ECTs are and then use that uniqueness in their planning and delivery of the curriculum. So not using a one-size-fits-all, and bespoke professional development then for those ECTs to acknowledge the fact that they will have had a very different experience during their training, and you can't necessarily guarantee that 2 ECTs will have had the same training. Opportunities for subject-specific teacher training, again, and also the opportunity to engage in more pastoral activities, develop pastoral skills and work with parents. Making sure ECTs can participate fully in all aspects of school life, because that's one area where they're almost certainly likely to have lacked. Another area that I think is really interesting, actually, that's come out of this is around teacher education and identity. So there's a growing area of research in teacher education, particularly initial teacher education, about identity and about thinking about yourself as you are, who you are as a teacher. Our teacher identity is often mixed up with professional identity. But your identity as a teacher is something that's really, really complex. And actually thinking about who we are when we're a teacher does match some of the things that Harriet was saying about finding who you are as a teacher. Is really, really important. I just found that research so fascinating. I'd love to hear what you thought about that and how you think, what you think schools can do to support ECTs. We've heard from Harriet about what Harriet has done for herself as an ECT. I wonder what you think about how we can support, or what schools can do to support ECTs. And I think developing that idea and supporting ECTs to think about identity is something that's fascinating.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.